Welcome back to Former Feds and Friends, where former government employees react to sci-fi, fantasy, animated films, and all things nerdy, wonky, and awesome. I'm Madeline Velturo. I'm a former stabilization advisor with the U.S. government. And today, I'm very happy to be joined by Dan Sullivan, who's a longtime colleague of mine. He works with Refugees International. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Dan.
Well, thanks. I'm very happy to be on. As you said, I'm with Refugees International. I'm the director for Africa, Asia, and the Middle East, and started my career more than 20 years ago working for Save Darfur, and so have worked on themes of human rights, atrocities, and displacement during that time.
Awesome. Well, that makes you our perfect guest reactor for today's film because today we're going to be reacting to Encanto, a Disney animated film about a family that is displaced by conflict.
Yeah, thanks. I'm excited to look at this through the lens of displacement. Love the movie. I have a 7-year-old daughter who it's one of her favorite movies. So I expect this to do a good job delving into what displacement does to people, what causes displacement, what causes refugees, and what challenges they're going to face. I'm really excited to delve into this.
Awesome. Yeah. I am too. I'm a big fan as well, even though I don't have a young daughter, but I am a young daughter at heart. Without further ado, let's jump right into it.
Long ago, when my 3 babies had just been born, your abuelo Pedro and I were forced to flee our home. And though many joined us, hoping to find a new home, we could not escape the dangers. And your abuelo was lost. In our darkest moment, we were given a miracle. And it blessed us with a refuge in which to live. And our house, our casita itself, came alive to shelter us.
This opening scene of Encanto really does a good job of conveying the general experience of people who've been displaced and one of the main drivers of displacement, which is fighting and violence against civilians. I've worked doing research in the camps for Rohingya in Bangladesh, camps for Darfuris in eastern Chad or in South Sudan, Egypt. This one in particular takes place in Colombia. Colombia is for decades had been the source of some of the largest numbers of internally displaced people. And so that's a difference between refugees or those who flee the borders of their country, and then there's the internally displaced people, or IDPs, which are displaced within their country. So we know that this is based on very real things that happened in Colombia. The refugees and internally displaced people I've spoken with, they'll talk about they're fleeing with little warning and carrying nothing but the clothes on their back, their families, the fact that the father is kind of subtly left behind. We imagine what might have happened to him. Very common story. Women headed households in these refugee camps.
So you've talked about the difference between a refugee and an IDP, an internally displaced person. What's the relevance of the difference? Like, where does the difference matter?
It comes down to international and domestic law, where an IDP, because they are internally displaced, they are a citizen of a country. They've been displaced, but they're still a citizen of that country. So it is the primary responsibility of that country to take care of those civilians. For refugees, they've fled across borders. They're in a new country. So they are not considered citizens. They don't have the right to work or education usually. And then there's the cultural and language affinity. Often with refugees, there's a feeling, I would say most of the time, initially there is, in most cases, you see the host community welcoming and they're the first ones providing aid. But over time, it becomes a draw on the resources and jobs available to them. So you see this trend where, particularly if they're coming to another country where there's a backlash against them.
We swear to always help those around us and earn the miracle that somehow found us. The town keeps growing, the world keeps turning, but work and dedication will keep the miracle burning, and each new generation must keep the miracle burning.
There's some studies of like the role that refugees play in contributing to communities. They're coming with this like this desire to rebuild a life, and so they really tend to be motivated, right? There's even a US government study, I think by the Health and Human Services, and I think some of the people who had commissioned it were thinking it would come out showing like what a burden refugees are, to allow them to cut back on the refugee program. But what they found was actually, on average, the amount of economic contributions that resettled refugees bring to the economy versus whatever is used to help integrate them or get them started it's far outweighed. So that it's a net positive.
50 years ago, in our darkest moment, this candle blessed us with a miracle. And the greatest honor of our family has been to use our blessings to serve this beloved community. Tonight, we come together once more as another steps into the light.
These rituals, these remembrances, this is something we've talked about before on the show, is the importance of memory and remembrance as a tool for both healing and prevention.
Yeah, I mean, you look at going back to, the Jewish community and the Holocaust and Holocaust Remembrance Days, Holocaust museums all across the world, this importance of remembering, both in terms of recognizing experience, but also making sure and going against the disinformation or deniers of these kinds of things happening. Yeah, you see this common theme, and here it's stated right at the beginning of the scene, like 50 years ago. So it's not just about like this latest gift, but it's like this is steeped in a long time tradition.
I'm the strong one, I'm not nervous. I'm as tough as the crust of the earth is. But under the surface, I feel berserk as a tightrope walker in a three-ring circus. Under the surface, I'm pretty sure I'm worthless if I can be of service. Pressure like a drip, drip, drip that'll never stop. Pressure that'll tip, tip, tip till you just go pop. Whoa, no cracks, no breaks, no mistakes.
When I'm watching this, I'm thinking in the context of, or the lens of like refugees and displacement. I think of a lot of the families that I've met who have there's like these older siblings who are taking on a lot. Refugees International has a refugee fellows program, and the last fellow that I worked with comes to mind in this. Her name's Lucky Kareem. She's a Rohingya refugee. In August of 2017, when hundreds of thousands were kicked out by violence, she was among them, and she was maybe 14, I think, when she left, and then lived for about 6 years in the camps. This scene makes me think of that because of all the things that she did and what she took on from a very early age, becoming an outspoken member of her community and of her family, and that what she was able to do set things up for her brothers, and she talks about them a lot now. Oh, well, can't even imagine the kind of pressure that she must have gone through in that. But
that's a very poignant example that her name is Lucky. This scene and other scenes of this movie demonstrate the dissonance that I think displaced people can often feel, being so in such a difficult situation and also being the lucky ones from their community to have survived or have gotten out.
Yeah, there's a book, and I think it might be called The Lucky Ones, that it basically goes through, you hear all of the trials and travails that, these people fleeing go through, and then they describe themselves as the lucky ones.
And at the same time that refugees, displaced people are under so much pressure, there's the added pressure that you brought up of they need to be perfect citizens in the countries in which they are being housed. Like they have to earn their protection. They have to be the perfect neighbors. They have to be nothing but helpful because they're already trying to buck the stereotypes that come from the outsider and trying to build trust in new communities that don't have reason to trust them.
The context of the Rohingya camps in Bangladesh come to mind. This is the largest refugee settlement in the world, with over 1 million Rohingya who are being hosted by the Bangladeshi community. And one of the things you'll hear the Rohingya refugees almost always starting with their gratitude towards the government of Bangladesh and to the Bangladeshi people. And it's not just because it's like, hey, we're here, we have to. It's really earnest. They do feel that.
Where are you coming from in such a hurry?
I'm sorry.
What is in your hair?
My
gift! I'm losing my gift! What? What did you do? What did you say to her?
Nothing. I don't...
Mirabel, I have to go get the Guzmans for Isabella's engagement. Stay away from Luisa until I can talk to her. Tonight, we can't have any more problems.
I think the film does a good job of depicting the kind of lonely and very stressful position that the grandmother is in.
I mean, it goes back to that kind of theme and a very common thing in refugee settings or just generally displacement settings where you have a much larger number of women-led households, and how that can be challenging, both specific challenges that they face on their own, but also often in like patriarchal societies where they aren't usually allowed to work outside the house or things like that, or outside of the shelter if it's in refugee camps. And then just the vulnerabilities of, we've seen in settings like the Darfur camps and others where it's the women that are going out to get the firewood or things like that, and then are often exposed to sexual violence.
Everything was perfect. Abuela was happy. The family was happy. You want to be a better sister? Apologize for ruining my life.
I am sorry. That your life is so great.
Even in this difficult context, you have just like your classic child like sibling rivalry and
absolutely
immaturity.
Yeah. I've been stuck being perfect my whole entire life.
You can still marry that big dumb honk.
I never wanted to marry him. I was doing it for the family. I just made something unexpected, something sharp, something new. How far can I rise to the sky? Let's go. A hurricane, a da-da-da-da. What can you do when you are different and truly alone? This is the moment you're going. What can you do when you know who you wanna be isn't perfect, but I'll still be okay. You're a bad influence.
What is going on?
Talking now specifically about children and what is lost of a childhood when you are displaced, or when this type of burden that is like on the Madrigal family is placed on you as a child. Of course, the first thing that displaced people need is shelter and food and safety. But very soon after that, you need education for the children whose brains are developing, because they will continue to develop whether or not there are trained professionals there to help them along the way.
Yeah, it's really important. I mean, I probably interviewed hundreds, if not thousands, of refugees at this point. One of the first things they say beyond, we want to go home, we want education, we want a better life for our children. And a lot of populations, displaced populations, are a majority children. There's international organizations like Save the Children that are focused on that challenge. So it's something that's recognized, but in this global environment of cuts, we're seeing that kind of specialized needed program. It's not seen as life-saving in the way of like direct food or medicines, so that it often gets cut.
This river is where we were given our miracle. I thought we would have a different life. I thought I would be a different woman.
You make plans and then they get disrupted.
Yeah, really poignant that going back to where this was in both worst day of her life and then also saying this is when we got a miracle.
Yeah.
Dos oruguitas paran el viento mientras se abrazan.
Just underscores that, refugees, they're fleeing for a reason. None of them want to, and most of them want to go back to their homes.
El tiempo sigue cambiando, inseparables son. Y el tiempo sigue cambiando.
Such a common scene from real life refugee situations.
The chaos.
sometimes you hear stories of people going both opposite directions, telling people not to go that way. Just yeah, absolute chaos and people not being sure where it is safe to go.
Futuro hay oruguitas, no se aguante más, hay que crecer, aparte y volver, hacia adelante seguirás, llena de milagros.
Again, that women-headed household theme that we've been talking about.
Dos oruguitas desorientadas.
I was given a miracle.
And that scene right there where she, they go forward to where she's much older, she's still carrying that.
Yeah.
And I was so afraid to lose it that I lost sight of who our miracle was for.
You lost your home. Lost everything. You suffered so much, all alone. So it would never happen again.
Those couple of lines I just like stood out to me, like, particularly when there's atrocities involved, right? That never again feeling for the people who directly experience it. I mean, you get away from that and you're saying, look, no, never again.
How do I? It's the
I'm
most
not going to
important
experience
thing.
this again. My family's not going to experience this. And so, and again, that theme of the men on horseback just brings me back to the literally what the Janjaweed were called in Darfur, and and it comes in all different forms, right?
Men on motorcycles.
Yes, absolutely. Drones. I mean, like, it's all changing in so many of these cases. It's not just the military's fighting, but it's like this targeting of civilians. You saw that they were setting fire to the villages, right? And this is unfortunately that's still very common today.
This scene is so different from the story told in the beginning. The story told in the beginning is a story meant to build resilience. It's a simple narrative, and then the way it's portrayed when she's remembering, like, this is what actually happened that I've pushed out for the sake of resilience. It's so chaotic and it's so much more brutal. But it's interesting that that is something that the new generation can bring to it, is a clearer view, having not fully experienced it. The two of them coming together to say, it's time to switch from resilience to healing. Let's join together and we can do this together.
What's that sound?
I think it's everyone in town.
And then at the end, you see like now the community is reaching out and supporting them, and that's really inspiring. And we've seen that in different settings as well, where when refugees come under attack, there's members of the community who come out, whether it's the local political leaders or local religious leaders who speak out and make this connection. And in that survey that showed if Americans know a refugee directly, almost 90% of them are supportive of having a refugee program in the United States. So kind of harkens back to the power of this storytelling of humanizing refugees, displaced people.
Home sweet home. I like the new foundation.
It isn't perfect.
Neither are we.
That's true. Just one more thing before the celebration.
What?
We need a doorknob.
We made this one for you.
I do think the idea of a matriarch giving up her expectations of perfection is like the most fantastical fantasy ending a Disney film has ever given us.
Yeah.
Which is the point, right? It's hopeful. They're supposed to be hopeful, but it's also quite... It's very easy in the movie. It's not so easy in real life.
Yeah, I really like this movie both because of the catchy music, the fact my daughter loves it. I've seen it or parts of it a million times. But yeah, when looking at it through the lens of like where I'm coming from having worked on displacement at Refugees International and having spoken to so many refugees and IDPs, people who've experienced displacement, I just see it through that lens as such a powerful message of the experience, and introducing it to a young audience of like, what is that experience of displacement like in a kind of general sense? Why are people leaving? and then the challenges that they carry throughout the years. We're in a particular moment where if you're looking at displacement of people, we are now at a record number, over 122 million people forcibly displaced around the world.
Wow.
That's the most since people started recording the numbers. And then at the same time, you have this backdrop of the erosion of these long-standing international norms and systems, pushback against
Right.
the International Refugee Convention, violations of international humanitarian law, and the level of assistance that goes out to displaced people. So all of the whole system's under pressure there. But where I see hope is talking to refugees. There's a broader kind of movement towards localization and towards
Hmm.
refugee leadership and empowering of refugees and IDPs. Nobody can tell their story like they can. And I'm inspired by and really fortunate to be working for Refugees International that has this refugee fellows program. And so I've had the opportunity to work closely with young refugee leaders who are just doing amazing things.
If there's like a call to action that you would want to leave like a general audience with, what would that be?
Yeah, I would say just getting educated about the situations of refugees through, refugiesinternational.com or .org, sorry.
We will link it in the
Yeah.
description.
As well as we're part of a coalition called the Refugee Advocacy Lab, which has a lot of some of the studies I talked about of how refugees are welcome are in there, and they have some various campaigns. In the Refugee Advocacy Lab has a campaign on welcoming people and protecting the humanitarian parole system. So that's part of like where refugees and displaced people who are in the United States are allowed to stay and not be pushed back to countries where they could be at risk. So that's something that's under attack and something. So I think going there and lending your name and support to that. Right now we have a Speak Out on Sudan campaign. So
Oh, okay, cool.
you can go to speakoutонsudan.org and just raising awareness of some of the issues, and there's various campaign and opportunities to take some action there. Meet a refugee if you can. It's it's such a powerful experience, and then just generally knowing and speaking out about what's going on.
All right. Well, that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much to Dan for sharing your expertise. And thanks to all y'all for tuning in. If you do have questions, though, about what we discussed, please be sure to leave them in the comments below. If you want us to react to other Disney films, other animated films, then be sure to give this video a big thumbs up so that we know that you liked it. And you can please share your suggestions for other reactions and videos in the comments below, because we want to hear what you want to see next. We release episodes every Tuesday, so be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next videos. You can click that bell to get notifications. And finally, everything we produce is available for free. We don't put anything behind a paywall, but if you are in a place to support the channel, we very much welcome contributions through our Ko-Fi account, which is linked in the description box below. So we will see you next week. Peace out.
Slap me in the face and tell me I'm perfect. I wanna feel nice instead of just feeling sad. The world is so big and its future is yucky. I wanna play nice, but you should treat me real bad. Give it to me, sucker, come on, make me go loco. Laugh a little harder, let's throw rocks in the house. The world is so big and its future is yucky. As it keeps on spinning, I'm still sorting it out.
I will say, I have never gotten through the scene without crying. I think I'm probably going to do it this time, but